Ego is defined in the dictionary as the part of the psyche that governs action rationally, and egotism is defined as selfishness and self-interest.
All right.
One of the beliefs that have been taught and that has been promoted extensively in most Christian religions is that the natural man is an enemy to God. Many would define the natural man as man's ego. In talking with therapists and in reading many books on spirituality, self-help, psychology, etc., ego is more often than not referred to as something we should get rid of, or at least keep in check and control if we want to be happy. If it were to be rated as good or bad, the majority of people I know would say it is bad and a source of evil. I disagree. I believe and agree with you in that you have expressed the importance of being selfish enough to proclaim that nothing is more important than I feel good. I find myself wincing when I find negative references to the ego. Many would say my support of the ego is the ego in me speaking, and I should strive to silence it. I think the ego is what causes our desires to shoot forth and let us know what we do want. So I think that it's not only beneficial but crucial to us in our human experience. I don't think we need to get rid of it, but that we should be listening to it. Can you clarify this for me? Am I missing part of the picture?
You have laid a very good basis here, and we can clarify this easily for you. It will all fit together for you. Remember step 1 and step 3. And so, simply put, everything that you have read there, your definition and description of ego, even as others are proclaiming it to be, we do not disagree. In other words, you are a focusing mechanism. And you have this perspective that emanates from where you stand, and everything that you perceive is through the eyes of self. And you cannot help but feel preference from your position. And everyone does the same. Here is a premise, an absolute law, that as you hear it, it will make you feel soft and easy about the idea of individual selfishness, because we want to start there. If it is true, and it is, that when I, meaning any point of consciousness, asks, it is given, then can you not feel the perfection of the selfish ego? Because every vantage point gets to ask, and every vantage point is answered. And when everyone is individually choosing and source is answering, then what could be a more balanced world? As each individual is shooting off their rockets of individual desire and source is answering it, what could be a more fair, a more balanced universe? So, understanding that you cannot get rid of your preferences, therefore you can never be rid of that which many are, and we think rather accurately and well, calling ego. Now here's the way it all fits together. You hear us talking about, you ask through your contrast. And source answers, that's step 2. And step 3 is letting it in. And so what this debate, this age-old debate, has always been about is about how step 1 and step 3 fit together. The ego is a very important part of step 1. In other words, it's from that framework of self and self-interest and what I know and what I care about and what I've experienced and what I would like and what I've lived and what I've seen others live. It's from that perspective that you conclude as you so selfishly and accurately can for yourself. But what you've written from your paper is very accurate when religionists say that man sometimes has lost God in his ego, because very often in his struggle for what he does want, he does not relax and allow it to be. And so everything that you have written there that others have concluded is accurate, we would say. It's just helpful if you have an understanding that both aspects of your beingness are of value. And so it's a really funny thing, as people argue this over the years, should we have ego or should we not? And it never occurred to any of them that sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it isn't. In other words, no one ever felt free enough. What is it about humans that makes you want to say, well, this is good and therefore it's always good? When the fire is in your house and the firemen come and they break out your windows and they shoot the water in your house, it's a good thing. But is it a good thing when they come on a day when there is no fire? And you say, no, well, that's silly. Of course it isn't. And we say, then why can't everything be that way? Why can't some applications of it serve you and some applications of it not? In other words, your perspective and your desire and the clarity of your wanting is a very important part of the deliberate creative process. But once you have let universal forces know what you want, then you have to get out of the way and trust and let it be. You see.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, good afternoon. This week I saw this fascinating show on genomics. And in this show, they said that we as humans are 99.9% absolutely identical, generically. And my question to you is, if we're born 99.9% identical, and we come out of the womb, and I've never seen a baby that wasn't all love. I mean, they're all love. How do we get so different? How do we get this separateness? Where does all this come from?
Well, the most important thing for you to realize is that while you are flesh, blood, and bone, and that is the genetics that they are talking about,
right,
you are much more energy or spirit than you are any of that.
That's true, I understand.
So you come forth with a variety of intentions, and it is that difference in intentions that makes for the balance. That
why do we lose the love? Why does this love go away?
We can answer that easily for you, and we think you will hear it easily.
Okay.
Everyone wants to feel good. It is built into you. Mm-hmm. And when you are looking into the environment around you and you see things that cause you to feel good, you say, we want more of those. I would support that. I would vote for that. I would put my money behind that. Mm-hmm. But when you see things that when you look at them make you feel bad, you say, we don't want any of that. And then you begin to, without even recognizing that you're doing it, conclude that if that thing that feels bad would be more like that thing that feels good, then I could feel better more of the time. And then you begin to believe that things that are outside your control need to line up for you so that you can feel good. And now you are powerless because you don't understand the different intent and you can't make them vibrate the way you need them to. And then you begin developing this, what we would call very conditional love. I feel good, I feel love, I feel connection, as long as these conditions line up the way I need them to. But since they don't, now I need to push against the things that are wrong. In other words, if I could just get rid of this, then the world would be better. If I didn't have that in my world, then I would feel so much better. And so as you push against that, what do? You activate it and hold it in your vibration.
I see.
So it is the misunderstanding about the difference between attraction and assertion. This is a universe based on attraction. Is the difference between understanding inclusion, which everything in this universe is, and exclusion, which does not exist anywhere. Exclusion is like trying to deactivate something. Mm-hmm. So what happens is people, through the process of observation, get disconnected. Now, we want to carry this a little further because this is the answer that we've been waiting to give for a long, long time. You're hung up in step one.
Okay.
And step one's an important step.
Uh-huh.
In other words, step one is important to this process, but step three is important to this process. And when humans get hung up in step one, in other words, I know what I don't want, I know what I do want, how are we going to get rid of it? Let's face the facts. When did this start? How far back into my past do I have to go? Why do I feel this way? Why don't I feel better? Well, it happened when I was 2. Well, it was something that my mother did. Well, if my mother had been differently, if the government would do something differently, I could feel better. You get a sense of it? In other words, it's all about not trusting or not knowing who you really are because you got sideways of that feeling. And all of that is about not being willing to feel your own emotion and trust that what your emotion is telling you is worth listening to. And that happened because, this is fun, and that happened because when you're little, some well-meaning person warned you about some danger when there was no danger. So you heard it with your ears, and you believed them because they were big, but your guidance system wasn't giving you any of it. and you trusted them instead of your own guidance. You got separated from your own feeling. You lost the sensation of understanding what your guidance system was telling you in order to relate it to what they were telling you in the moment. It's like a well-meaning parent. Jerry and Esther saw it in a campground one day. These parents, well-meaning, really nice people, were tired of chasing their little kids around. And so Esther overheard them telling them about the monsters that lived in the bushes. Yeah. Because the kids wanted to go play in the bushes and the parents didn't want to go with them. So they said, there's stuff in those bushes that you don't want to deal with. Like what? Well, they're big and they're mean. There's a boogeyman in the bushes. And that little child was so obedient. That child never got more than 20 feet from the side of his parent the whole rest of their camping trip. In other words, it was like a dog on a chain. The child was afraid to venture out. And the thing that is so shocking about that is that this child had no way of measuring his own resources because there was no danger in the bushes.
Right.
So he was taking somebody else's word for danger in the bushes, and then parents wonder why their children don't understand their own guidance system, you see. Yeah. So it's all about that. But the good news is you get crossways from allowing in your quest to determine and decide. And the determining and the deciding is a very important part. And you never thought it was a risk, and it isn't, because you always knew that who you really are would prevail, and does. And so you never felt like you were too far out on the leading edge. You always knew that resources would come along. When you are little, even though you might get out of kilter, there's always a teacher or a loved one. There's always someone who gives you those clues of guidance. In other words, even the most exaggerated diversion from your path is not as far off of your path as any of you believe. But you take your life so seriously. You worry so much about what others think. You try so hard to be this picture of perfection instead of just understanding that you are here to live joy. And that brings us to the biggest point that you are reaching for. When you lose sight of the fact that joy is your quest,
right,
then you get out of balance. You came with this perfect triad of intentions of freedom and growth and joy. And the freedom is a basic. It is a standard. You are so free you can choose bondage. Freedom is the natural basis of your experience. When you choose joy as your goal or your dominant intention, what you're saying is, I will always try to line up my thoughts, words, and actions with something that feels good, because you can't have joy otherwise. And when you do that, expansion or growth is the natural result. But then we have to say to you, expansion or growth is the natural result no matter what you do. So when you think about it that way, if you can't get it wrong and you never get it done, then what's this big hang-up? Why is the struggle so severe? When you think about how perfect you are, and how worthy you are, and how listened to you are, and how particular you are, how specifically individual you are, and how blessed you are, and how worthy you are, and how the universe is responding to you so powerfully, there's just that one little missing piece that we talk about day after day after day after day, of just relaxing into the trust and knowing and allowing and believing that you are in the perfect place. So we say, so let's do a rampage of appreciation. And people will say, for what? So that I can get what I want? And we say, no, just so you can be joyful in the moment. And they say, yes, but for what? We say, let's do a virtual reality. And they say, why? And we say, so that you can feel good while you do it. And they say, yeah, we get that. So we can feel good. But then what? Then what? In other words, what else will I get from it? And that's the rub right there. If you could just get it, that this powerful now is the junction where you meet you, where the source that is you meets the physical perspective ego. We sort of like that is you. And as these two parts of you converge, and you are aware of the way you feel so that you are working in your consciousness to allow the harmonious convergence. Pretty good, eh? Then every moment of your experience is the powerful now that is really you.
Yeah.
Now, it's all right now. It's all right now. So how often do you find yourself now struggling or working a little hard in order to affect something for later? or putting off something that you'd really like to do, or worrying.
Yeah.
And when you realize that it's all now, life is now, life is now, life is now. It's now, it's now, it's now, it's now,
Right.
it's now. Life is now. I'm using it now. It's sort of like you have this quantity of oxygen that you are assigned. Of course, that's not true. But in order to get more, you have to breathe what you've got.